Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to be talking about how we get data into the Centrex Software CRM platform and then how we manage that data in the software. Many of you will come to us with large databases. Some of you may have no databases. The point is we want to be able to show you how to get data in the software platform. Once data is in the software platform, how you can manage that data on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll jump into the Contacts tab here, and we are going to click on a button called Data Sources. Okay, this is where we can put a unique identifier on all the different places we are going to be getting leads from, whether it be a lead company, whether it be from your website, or whether it be an import into the software. Okay, so if we click on Data Sources, you can see here it gives us the ability to create a brand new data source. The first thing we're going to do today is we're going to talk about web form data sources. So if you guys are buying leads from a lead provider, or you get leads off your website, or if you're getting leads from anywhere on the web via a web form, we're going to show you how to API that data directly into the software. Okay, so let's go ahead and name our data source. I'm going to name my data source Centrex Website, and the type is going to be web form. You guys are going to choose the file type that's been associated with your industry. I'll do a business loans, for example. And then how do you want the stage or the status to come into the software for a brand new lead? Okay, so what we can do, if it's coming from a web form, whether it's your website or whether it's a lead provider, more than likely you're going to want to click on lead, warm lead, because that's essentially a warm lead. Someone has raised their hand saying, hey, listen, I'd like to discuss your services and how I can pay for your services. That's a warm lead. Someone's raised their hand saying, I'm interested. Okay, and then we're not going to really worry about anything else at the moment. What we're going to do now is we're going to click on Save Data Source. What you'll notice after you save the data source is you'll see here the system spits out a post URL. Okay, so depending on how you log in or your unique URL, you're going to see a post URL here. You're going to give this post URL to your IT guy to insert into your form, into your website. Or you're going to give it to the lead provider. Let's say you're buying leads from a lead provider and they have the ability to send data to you via a post URL. You're going to give this post URL to that lead provider or to your IT guy, and they're going to be able to insert that post URL into your web form. Okay, now anytime you send over this post URL, the first thing that's going to happen once they're done inserting the post URL is they're going to want to send you a test lead. When they send you a test lead, what's going to happen is over here on the far right in import fields, you're going to see all the data points from that web form. So for example, on that web form, if you ask for first name, last name, email address, business name, you're going to see those fields show up right here in the software. And then you're going to map those fields to the fields in the CRM. When you send data from a web form into our software platform, you want to make sure the data gets inserted in the proper place. Okay, so for example, again, on that web form, if you're asking for first name, last name, email, business name, you'll see those fields come in here, and then you're going to map those fields to the fields in the CRM. So you'll notice by each one of the fields, there'll be a drop down. So you're going to map first name to first name, last name to last name, email to email, company name to company name, phone number to phone number, so on and so forth. And then you're going to click on Save Data Source. And now every single time that web form is filled out, all that data is not only going to be inserted into the software, but it's also going to be inserted into the correct place into the software. So the first name goes where the first name should be, the email address goes where the email address should be, so on and so forth. Okay, you guys can ask as many questions on your web form as you want, and when you do that first initial test post into the CRM, again, you'll see all those questions stack right here, and you're going to map those into the system. When we do a test import here from a lead database, I'll show you exactly what I mean. Okay, now once you've given the post URL to your IT guy or to your lead vendor, and you've mapped your fields, another thing you have the ability to do is create an autoresponder. So for example, if someone fills out a form on your website and all the data comes into the CRM, it's probably best practices to send that client an automatic email saying whatever you'd like to say. Most people say, thank you so much for your interest. A sales representative will be contacting you shortly. Okay, you can control that message up here in the email marketing tab. So what we can do is we can turn autoresponder on. We can choose the autoresponder category for the email template. We can choose the email template itself. Again, that email template is designed and built by you in the e-marketing tab. And then you can choose a sender. So a sender is any email address you want this autoresponder coming from. And you can create as many senders as you want as well in the email marketing tab. Okay, so you can choose a category, a template, a sender, and then down here at the bottom, if you want to automatically assign leads as they come into the software to you or to your team, you can come down here, turn assigning on, and then you can highlight all the different names that you want the system to essentially round robin leads to. Okay, so if you have 5 people on staff in sales, and you get 5 leads a day, 1 lead will go to each rep every single day. If you've got 5 reps on file and you get 10 leads a day, 2 leads will fairly go to each rep on file as you highlight their names here. Okay. Now what you can also do is you can highlight no names if you wish to do so, and you can make each one of these leads public. So as the leads come into the software, every single sales rep has access to see that lead, and then they can assign that lead to themselves. So it really just kind of depends on how you want to manage this particular data source. And then of course you've got additional assignments down here at the bottom. If you know that you need to assign this lead to a certain company or to a certain role, you can do so as well. And then over here on the far right, you've got notifications. So you can highlight whoever you want to notify that a new lead came in. You can choose a certain template to send them, and then you can send form details and put in their email address here as well for notifications. If you have SMS notifications turned on in Centrex Software, when a new lead comes into the software, and let's say it's assigned to you and you've got your name highlighted here as well, it's going to send you a text message to your cell phone that you have a new lead with the name and the phone number. It's going to send you an email to your inbox with name and phone number and all the details, and it's also going to have a little in-system pop-up notification as well that you've been assigned a new lead, and you can click on that pop-up notification. It'll take you right to that client dashboard. Okay, so this is how you API data from a web form into Centrex Software. Okay, and every IT guy and every person you work with will be a little bit different, but essentially if you send them this post URL, they should easily be able to figure out. Most of our clients use WordPress. WordPress is a content management system, and WordPress has a form plugin called Contact Form 7, and it's got another plugin called Third-Party Integration, which allows you to post to a URL so you can push data into the software. Okay, so this is how we create a data source in the software for a web form or any sort of lead provider or any sort of data coming from a web form on the internet. Okay, so that is what we call a web form type data source. Let's jump back into Contacts tab. Let's jump back into Data Sources. And now let's create an import data source. So let's say you guys have a file of 10,000 records or 500 records or 2 records or 1,000,000 records. It doesn't really matter how many you have. If you start getting up into several 100,000, it's going to take some time, so you should be patient. However, you can upload a list into the software as well. So let's go ahead and call this test import. And the type is going to be import, not web form. We just did web form. Now we're going to do import. The file type, we always want to be whatever industry you're in. I'm going to go ahead and do business loans. The stage and status, when it comes to importing a database, I always say cold lead. A database is not a warm lead. It's just a database, right? So if you have a database of, let's say, 10,000 records, those clients may have asked for your services in the past, but they're not asking for them right now. Okay, so I always import as cold lead. Okay, now before you can choose a file here to import into Centrex Software, the first thing you need to do is you need to format your Excel file. So I have a small example here, not very many records, only about 10 records. Okay, and the first thing you need to do is you need to format your Excel file. So you notice here the first cell in the column is the label of that column. So I've got first name, I've got last name, I've got email address, I've got business name, I've got work phone, and I've got cell phone. You can have as many columns as you want: annual gross revenue, credit score, years in business, industry type, however you guys want. You can create as many columns as you want, but the very first cell of that column has to be the title of that column. That's how Centrex Software reads the file. Okay, and then of course you're going to have all your data stacked down that column. So all the first names, all the last names, all the email addresses on file, all the business names, the work phone and the cell phone. Okay, so this is your Excel file. Then what you need to do is you need to save as, and you need to save as a CSV file. Okay, now if I come back to the software platform here real quick, you'll notice if you are on a Mac computer, which I am on a Mac computer, okay, you want to make sure you save as a Windows CSV. If you're already on a PC, okay, by default it'll save the CSV file is a Windows CSV. But if you're on an Apple computer, okay, you have to make sure you save as a Windows CSV. Okay, so if we go back now to our Excel file, I have already saved this file as a Windows CSV. Okay, now that we formatted this, we can come back into Centrex Software. I can choose File here. I can click on Choose File. I can choose that CSV test import file. I can click on Open. And you can see here now it has the file name right here in this section. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Save Data Source. Now what will happen is the CRM will read that CSV file, and just like I told you before on a web form API data source, you'll see here all the fields are stacking. So I've got my first name from my CSV file, my last name from my CSV file, my email, my business name, my work phone, and my cell phone. I need to map these fields from the CSV file to fields in the CRM. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to drop this down and I'm going to find first name. There's first name here. And then I'm going to drop this one down and I'm going to do last name. And we'll go ahead and find last name. Here it is. And then I'm going to find email. Here's email. And then I'm going to find business name. There's business name. And then I'm going to find work phone. There's work phone. And I'm going to find cell phone. Okay, and here's cell phone. Okay, so I've mapped all my fields. And there's no need to click on Save Data Source, okay? Once you map your fields, it automatically saves it. And then what I can do is you'll notice here there are 9 files within that CSV file, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna click on Start Merge. So if I click on Start Merge, what'll happen is it'll ask you, are you sure? Have you mapped all your fields correctly? And I'm gonna say okay. And then down here at the bottom, you'll see Merge Job has started, import starting, 9 records have started. It'll refresh the page. Okay, so I can get rid of these internal notifications here. Okay, so now how do you know the data has been imported correctly? Well, we're going to go build a list, which is essentially the next part of this video, to see if the data came in. So I'm going to jump into the Contacts tab. I'm going to click on New List, and I'm going to name this list Test Import. I want to keep it consistent. Under Available Filters, I'm going to drop down Data Source because I want to see all the leads that just came in from this particular data source. I'm going to choose Test Import, and I'm going to click on Add Filter, and I'm going to click on, there it is, 9 contacts found. And over here on the far right, maybe I want to drag and drop a few custom fields. Okay, so at the bottom here, you'll see here I've got home phone. I don't really need home phone. I'm going to drag that off. Okay, I've got created, full name, email, stage status, time and status, and inactive days. Now what I do also want to see is I want to see business name. So I'm going to find business name here, and I'm going to drag that down. I also want to see work phone. So I'm going to drag down work phone. And then I think another field we added was cell phone, if I'm remembering correctly. And we're going to find cell phone, and we're going to drag cell phone down. So this gives you the data columns that you want to see from a list view perspective. And then I'm going to go to the top. I'm going to click on Save List. And you guys will notice here, there's the 9 leads that you just got done importing into the software. Full name, business name, cell phone, work phone, and then of course the email is a little icon, not the email address itself, and you can click on that icon and shoot an email off to the client. Okay, so that is a very rough example on how we import data into the software, and then once we've imported that data, how we find that data right here. Okay, now if I did an import incorrectly and I just want to delete all this, I can come over here to the far right and I can do with list or with selected. If you do with list, it happens to be this list that you created, and it's all leads on the list. If I click on with selected, you have to come over here and you have to select these leads in order for them to be affected by with selected. Okay, so I'm going to do with list. I'm going to click on mass edit, and I'm going to click on the green circle, and I'm going to click on mass delete. It's going to ask me, are you sure? I'm going to say okay, And now you'll notice this list I have here has no data on it because I deleted all the leads. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the title of this list, and I'm also going to click on delete list, okay? Because I no longer need this list because there's no more data in the software. Okay, so now that I'm back on the Contacts tab, I can jump into data sources, and you'll notice you can see here in the drop down the different data sources that I have, my web form data sources and my import data sources. I can always come into a certain data source, click on edit, and I can delete this data source as well. Sometimes when you delete data, it just happens to not be the way you want it, or it doesn't insert data correctly. You want to do it over again. You can always come in here and delete those data sources anytime you want. It's super easy to do so. Okay, so not hard. That's data sources. That's how you get data into the software. You come into the Contacts tab, you jump into data sources, and this is how we get data into the software. And then also, once data is in the software, how we notify sales reps of new leads, how we can send autoresponders to those new leads, so on and so forth. Okay, that's data source technology. Now that we have data in the software, how do we manage the data? Okay, one of the consulting packages that we have here at Centrex Software is a consulting package called Dynamic Data Management via List Building. Okay, so what you guys are going to be able to do is build several different types of lists, share those lists with certain departments or certain team members so they can toggle between those lists throughout the day to manage their data. Now, here's one nice part about Centrex Software. Most other CRM platforms require you to build several different lists for every single rep. So if you have a rep named Angie, for example, you have to build a new lead Angie list, an old lead Angie list, a document collection Angie list, this list, that list, all for Angie. And then you got to do it again for Fred and for Nicole and for Trey. Okay, so it gets very cumbersome and it gets very confusing when you have to manage a billion different lists and you've only got 4 or 5 salespeople on the floor. Our system is much different. In our system, you can build lists, you can share the list with the entire sales department, and then you can have certain settings on that list so people can see that list, but they can only see leads on that list assigned to themselves. Makes data management 1,000 times easier. Okay, so if you guys don't have the time to do something like this, or you don't want to do something like this, refer to one of our consulting packages, and you'll be quite impressed on how we can build out a dynamic data management strategy. Okay, so with list building, the reason why we call it dynamic data management is because when you build a new list, you can put filters on lists. If you're filtering on status, for example, and you change the status of a client or of a file in the software, that lead is going to fall off one list and fall onto a different list. Okay, we have time and status filters. I want to see all my leads that have been in the status for 3 days for in-document collection. Okay, so once that file has been in that status longer than 3 days, it'll no longer be on that list. Okay, so we call it dynamic data management because if you implement it correctly, data is constantly falling off one list and onto a different list to manage your data appropriately, whether you have certain departments or you have time-sensitive filters, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's build a few of these together. In the beginning, to keep it simple, dynamic data management can get very complex over the course of time. What I always tell our clients is to keep it simple in the beginning. So what I like to do is I like to reference the workflow. So if we jump into our workflow that you guys have seen in some of the other trainings, this is the workflow. What I like to do in the beginning is I like to build lists just based on my statuses. Okay, you don't have to build a list for every single status if you don't want to. Like, for example, I combine in one list all my attempts, 1st through 6. Okay, but to keep it simple and so your salespeople can understand it in a very simple way, we create a different list for each one of these statuses and we share those lists with our team. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a few together. I'm going to jump into the Contacts tab. I'm going to jump into New List. And the first list I'm going to name is All Warm Leads. Okay, and obviously make sure you spell everything correctly so your team can read it. And then what I want to do is I want to share this list with either everyone or only maybe my sales department or whoever you want to share it with. Maybe you've got an underwriting department, a processing department. I'm going to share this list with everyone just for a second. And then what you can do is the feature I just got done discussing where you can share this list with everyone, but you don't want everyone seeing everyone else's leads. If I'm a sales rep on your team, I only want to see my own leads. I don't want to see everyone else's leads. So we can drop what contacts, instead of all contacts, we can drop it down to my contacts. So now, for example, every single person on the team has access to the same exact list, but they can only see leads on that list assigned to themselves. Okay, I'm going to jump this back and do all contacts just for now. Okay, and now because this list is for all warm leads, I'm going to come down to my available filters. I'm going to drop my filters down and I'm going to go find status under the S. So it's alphabetical. Let's go ahead and find status. Here it is. And the status I want, let's go ahead and find the status of warm lead. Here it is. And I'm going to click on add filter. And you'll see here there are 12 contacts in the software at the moment in the status of warm lead. Now, I want to customize my data columns on this list. I want to be able to see cell phone, work phone, business name, so on and so forth. So again, over here on the far right, under available fields to show, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom real quick to see what it comes default. And by default, you get created, full name, email, home phone, stage, status, time and status, and inactive days. Again, I'm not a huge fan of home phone depending on the industry you're in. Okay, so for this particular example, I'm going to get rid of home phone. But what I do want is I want work phone. So I'm going to drag that down. What I also want is cell phone. We all use cell phones today, so that's probably a good data point to drag in. I also want business name. Here's business name. I'm going to drop that down. And then you can drop down any other data point you want. Some clients really like to see the URL of the website, total income of the business. Maybe you guys want to see what state they're in. Okay, so you can drag down other data points if you wish. I'm going to keep it here for now. Just for these, I'm going to scroll back to the top and I'm going to click on Save List. Okay, so now if you notice, I've got this new list called Hot Warm Leads. Okay, and here are those 12 leads on that list. Okay, now if I ever want to edit this list and I can click on the title of the list, and maybe I don't want hot warm leads, I want to say all warm leads. I can click on Save List, and now I've changed the title of that list. Maybe I want to change one of these data columns here. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the name of this list one more time. I'm going to come down here to the bottom right, and again I can drag and drop maybe state. I want to see what state this client's in. So I'm going to put it under business name here. I'm going to come to the top. I'm going to click on Save List. And now you'll see here, you've got the state field entered into the software as well. Okay, so this is the first list we've ever built. Now, what I like to do when I add additional lists, instead of having to drag and drop these data columns every single time. So for example, again, if I click on all warm lead lists, we had to drag and drop the data fields that we wanted to see on the list. So instead of coming to the Contacts tab and clicking on New List and doing it all over again, what I like to do is I like to click on my first list. I like to edit this list. And if you'll notice here, there's a button here that says Save as New. Okay, so let's go ahead and create my second list. We want to do let's do all cold leads. Okay, same concept. I want to do all contacts. I want to share with everyone. Now, I want to get rid of this filter because this filter right now is the status of warm lead. So let's go ahead and get rid of this filter. I'm going to drop this down to status one more time. Let's go ahead and find status in the S's, status, and I'm going to drop it down to cold lead. So let's go ahead and find my status, cold lead, and I'm going to click on add filter. So you'll see here there's 118 contacts currently in cold lead, and I'm going to click on Save as New. So now, if I drop this down, I've got an all warm leads list and I've got an all cold leads list. Okay, so here's all my cold leads. Same concept. It pulled in business name, state, cell phone, work phone. It pulled all this stuff in, and everything now is the same except you're now filtering on a different status. Okay, now let's go ahead and do it again. I'm going to click on all cold leads. I'm going to change the name of this list to all leads in attempts. And then what I'm going to do, one more time, I'm going to get rid of this status here because this status is the cold lead status. Get rid of that. I'm going to drop my available filters down to status. Here's status right here. And then I'm going to go find all my attempts. Now you can highlight multiple statuses at one time. Okay, you don't have to just do one. So for example, I've got first attempt here, and I want to go all the way down to 6th attempt, and I'm going to click on add filter. So you can see here I'm filtering on multiple statuses now, and you can see here there are 24 leads in the software in first through 6th attempt, and I'm going to click on Save as New. So now what you can see here in your list structure is I've got all warm leads, all cold leads, all leads in attempts. And I can toggle between these lists throughout the day to manage my data. Okay, so I can jump into all my warm leads, I can jump into all my leads in attempts, so on and so forth. Okay, now sometimes what I like to do is I like to number these so they stack down my list view here appropriately. So if you've got maybe 15, 20 different lists, you're going to want them to stack appropriately. Right now they stack alphabetically. So what I do sometimes is I click on all warm leads, I may edit this list, and I put a 01 in front of it, and I click on Save List. And then what I do is I want to go into my all cold leads list, and I'm going to edit this list, and I will do 02 and click on Save List. Same concept for my all leads and attempts. I'll drop this one down, I'll click on the title of the list, and I'll do 03 and I'll click on Save List. Okay, so no matter what you name your list, this just kind of stacks them in order from the first status all the way to your last status, and it just makes it a bit easier to manage. Okay, let's go ahead and do a few more. So I'm going to click on all leads and attempts. I'm going to click on the title of the list, and I'm going to change 03 to 04. And then I'm going to do all leads in merchant reviewing app. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of this status. We don't need that status. And now I'm going to find status again. And I'm going to go find merchant reviewing app. So I'm going to scroll down. These are all my statuses. So merchant reviewing application, here it is. I'm going to click on add filter. You'll notice there's 12 leads in the software currently in the status, and I'm going to click on Save as New. Okay, so there you go. Now you've got a fourth list. So I've got all my warm leads, all my all cold leads, all leads in attempts, all leads in merchant reviewing application. Okay, let's go ahead and do one more. I'm going to click on the title of this list. I'm going to change 04 to 05, and then I'm going to delete this title here, and I'm going to do all leads in doc collection. Same concept. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this status. I'm going to drop this down to status as my available filter here. I'm going to find in document collection. If I scroll this down, where is it? There it is. Oh no, that's in collections. I want in document collection. There we go. Add filter. Okay, 12 contacts found. I can click on Save as New, and now you can see here I've got 5 different lists in the software. All warm leads, all cold leads, all leads in attempts, all leads in merchant reviewing app, all leads in doc collection. Okay, and you can see right here from this particular list view all of those leads. Okay, so I think you guys get the point. You can come in here and create as many lists as you want. Now, this is just the way you want to start building your list. Again, I think it's an easy way to do it. It makes good sense. A lot of sales reps like it this way. But if I click on the title of this list and I drop down my available filters, look at all the filters you guys have access to. Okay, so you can add as many filters as you want on one list. So for example, we've got this status already. The filter we currently have is in document collection. What we can also do is we can do time in status. So I can do equal to 3 days. I can add filter, and then I want to add another filter, and I want to see all my leads in the state of, let's say, California. I can add filter. And then I only want to see leads from a certain data source on this list. So I'm going to come up to data source. Where is it? Here it is. And I only want to see this, and I can click on add filter. So you guys can get very, very creative with how you build your dynamic list management strategy. This is why we have a consulting package here at Centrex Software, because over the course of time, depending on what you want to try to do, this can get very complex and it can get very confusing. It can be as simple as you want it, just like building lists based on statuses like we've done today in this video, or we can do time and status, we can do state, we can do data source, we can do all sorts of different types of filters so that your list building strategy is a living, breathing thing. Okay, as time goes on, as your sales team dispositions certain leads, you're going to see leads fall off of one list and onto a different list. Okay, so we call this dynamic data management. We have a consulting package. You guys can check out centrexsoftware.com, or you can refer to your sales representative and they can talk to you about the consulting package, and we come in here and build out a complete list building strategy for you. Okay, so if we jump back into the contacts tab, again, you can see here, you've got several different lists for you guys to manage, which makes it real nice. Okay, once you have your lists, there's a lot of cool things you can do from the list view. Okay, anytime you click on one of the list titles, it'll automatically alphabetically stack that list up and down. So if you do it once, it'll go A to Z. If you do it twice, it'll go Z to A. Okay, so any one of these. Okay, if it's a number, then it'll stack it numerically. Okay, on this list, you have the ability to click on the little email icon if there's an email on file, and you can shoot a quick email to this client. Okay, over here on the far right, you guys have a few action items. Okay, I can change the stage and status of this client on the fly in the software. I can edit the contact information on the fly by clicking on Edit Contact, and it takes you into the intake form for editing the information. I can take a note for this client on the fly in the software. I can schedule a calendar event for this client on the fly in the software, and then I can also upload a document or a contract of this client into the software as well. And then the green arrow on the far right takes you into the client dashboard for this particular client, or you can click on the client's business name or full name, and that'll take you into the client dashboard as well. Okay, so that's dynamic data management. And that's some of the tools that you guys can use to import data into the software, to API data into the software, and to manage your data once you get data into the software. It's very easy to edit data. We talked about that a bit earlier when it comes to with list or with selected. You can come in here and choose with list. I can drop mass edit, or I can export all my data. Click on the green circle here, and you can see all the different data points that you can mass edit anytime you want. If you want to automatically reassign all the data, you want to change the status of the data, you guys have options here. Okay, so thank you so much for watching, and we wish you the best of luck.